Hey, welcome back. Another handicapping video. This week's the Fountain of Youth at Gulfstream. Grade 2 event. Another prep for the Kentucky Derby. Scott Shapiro is here. Hey, Scott. How's it going?
Pretty well, Emily. I think we have, in my estimation, the best prep yet in terms of a couple horses I think that have a good chance to make a big splash in May, and looking forward to it.
Yeah, we briefly talked about this race before I hit record, and so we'll just kind of pick up this video where Scott and I were talking on our conversation, and we're just kind of looking. We don't have the morning line yet, but looking at just sort of a way to look at a race, and by starting at the favorite, just kind of assessing the favorite, and again, why we don't have morning lines. Both the number 6, Practical Joke, and the number 8, Irish War Cry seem to be legit favorites. Is that right, Scott?
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. These are two horses. I don't really make one of those Kentucky Derby, top tens or top 20s. But if I did, these two would be up or near the top. I think both of them are very talented and are ones to keep an eye on as we get closer to the starting gate at Churchill Downs.
Right. So, kind of before we get into the running lines of each horse, I want to just kind of talk about the race shape and talk about the plot, just kind of potentially how this race can unfold. And I'll start and then just kind of let you add anything that was going in. And part of the reason why I think both these horses are legit is based on the trip, and you can see the number 8 just kind of going to go left to right. Irish War Cry sitting kind of in the middle of the plot. My friend Jared Dinkin, he likes this spot. This is like his sweet spot, so I always think of him when I see a horse coming in here. But this position, this horse is going to get kind of first run on the speed horses, and has good tactical speed and a square representing his ability to kick, and then kind of a similar trip, and this horse sitting in quadrant 2, but above that par line is the number 6, Practical Joke. So again, a horse that could get a really similar trip, has kind of a good second corner move, and able to get into the race. So both those horses on trip seem like this is very favorable.
Yeah, when you look at favorites and you like them talent wise, and then you think they're the fastest horses, then you pull up your plot or to try to get a feel for how the trips are going to go, and they look like they're going to go like this. It's pretty hard to just decide to fade these horses in your wagering or in your predicting. They just seem to be in great spots and have the talent to move forward.
So really, I couldn't kind of decide between the 6 and the 8. So I don't know. Did you have a preference, one over the other?
Well, Practical Joke has been my horse for quite some time. I like, even, he was 2-1 at Saratoga in his maiden race, but I remember singling him that day, and he won. He won for fun, and then came back and won in the Hopeful. And I had him in the Champagne when he had that poor start, and I had him in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile when he had a little bit of trouble. So I am a little bit personally biased towards Practical Joke. When I pulled up the plot, I was kind of a little bit surprised, once again, that the contention was a snowflake and there was zero speed, given the fact that there is Irish War Cry, who was on the lead his last 2 starts, and then you have horses like Tackaful looking for 8, and Beasley, who have all been prominently placed as well. I thought maybe it would be a little more contentious up front and maybe set things up a little more for Practical Joke to run by Irish War Cry in the final strides. But the more I look at this plot, I kind of, side a little bit towards Irish War Cry, especially if he can relax just off the pace like he did in his sprint and still power home at 2 turns.
Yeah, I kind of see him just getting that trip, because you have horses. I have the plot pulled up right now, like the number 10, Tackaful, and another horse, Three Rules, Three Rules, Three Ruler. I got in trouble for saying these horses' names right. So three rules that both these horses are fast early and are just kind of need the lead types. I'll pull up that number 7 on the grid just so we can kind of see. But this horse has a lot of early speed, just kind of natural speed, and I just think from that position and kind of giving himself the best shot, he's going to be forwardly placed the first call, especially, I don't know how it shakes out at the half, but at least to get position. And we know the number 10, especially being drawn outside, it is going to go. And so I think both those horses, and then I'll talk about the 5 and 11, both those horses kind of needing to get forward position early, that should just kind of let the 8 just kind of fall right into a good spot, and almost could be almost like a lone trip if those two just kind of like get into each other. And then the number 5 Beasley and number 11, I also, like you said, they can be forwardly placed. I don't necessarily see those horses as need the lead types, where I kind of see Tacklefull and 3 Rules as almost kind of need the lead dueling types. Beasley pulled up right now, can kind of stalk, can press a little bit, and the number 11 as well can sit off the pace and doesn't necessarily need the lead type. So going back to that, I just think that the 8 could just kind of fall into the right trip and doesn't need to engage early, and just part of the way the race shaped up. Let me pull up the grid for the number 8, Irish War Cry. And last time out, gave the horse a B+ grade, Lone Green, and Tactics Plus. And part of that Tactics Plus was just the way the race kind of shook out. Rosario took advantage and took the lead. I don't think it was necessarily like the horse needed to be there. It was just sort of dynamics, and I felt the same way about the Laurel race.
Okay, yeah, so if you think this horse can relax, then certainly I would give him a tactical advantage over Practical Joke and the rest of the field as well. Probably going to want to be prominently placed on a big day at Gulfstream Park. Even if it's playing fast and it's contentious up front, they rarely will come from way out of it. And, watching Irish War Cry's races, it's really hard to find fault. My one concern, which you kind of have lessened, is that this horse may need the lead at 2 turns. If that is not the case, then that makes this horse dangerous both tomorrow and in the future. Even that much more dangerous, I should say.
Yeah, he's known to, in his races, he's lightly raced. I kind of have, Green a couple times back, and kind of being a little bit keen early, but it's not a horse that to me looks like he just kind of pulls and he's headstrong and like has to be in front. He's capable to relax a little bit. That doesn't worry me. And if they do decide to go, then and they do decide to send him, or somebody stumbles, or the jockeys decide they want to try to take back on a horse like 3 Rules or something, then then this horse is versatile enough that he can get into the race and again just possibly gets another trip. I'm gonna go back, see if there's anything on. I think we discussed that. So do you want to go into kind of a horse by horse, just kind of quick run through as we go through the field? Okay.
Yeah, I did. It's good that you mentioned 3 Rules, who I didn't mention as being prominently placed. I just missed going through. But that horse does not look like a colt that wants to relax much. They were didn't break all that well off the short layoff last time. But I agree, that horse certainly is going to be a part of the early pace and does not appear to want any part of relaxing.
Yeah, it was kind of a weird trip last time. He did kind of like lose his footing a little bit at the start, and was a warm up, which I'm not a big fan of, and so maybe an overconfident ride. But kind of going back to this horse, before he was in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, I just kind of pegged this horse that even when he won at a route back in October, as a horse that's not necessarily looks like a 2-turn router to me, and even though he crushed by 10 lengths that day, I just feel that this horse, once he gets into more classier company, that he's going to be a bit exposed at that route distance. And I think this horse is a very nice horse. I'm just, I question him being able to kind of step up with the class of those other 2. So let's go through. We'll go through horse by horse, and the number 1. I mean, we don't have anything on him. I wasn't able to find a video. I don't know if you were or you.
I was.
Okay.
Yeah, and you can find the video on YouTube if you just type in Derby Nacional Peru.
Okay.
They have each year's version on there. The horse finished well considering it was 1.5 miles for a 3-year-old, but it was real tough still watching the replay or not to get a whole lot out of it, because you just don't have any idea of how that competition stacks up with today's or Saturday's competition.
What was the horse's running style? Was he kind of a mid-pack
Off,
horse, off the pace? Was he fully
yeah,
in place?
off the
Okay.
pace style. It was the video wasn't perfect that I saw, so it was hard to follow the beginning parts of the races perfectly, but definitely was off the pace. And these Donna Leach's Stables LLC, the owners, have had horses, in the States before. I know Peter Miller had a few of them out here in California, so
Mm-hmm.
it's not their first time bringing horses to America at all.
Yeah, just kind of like my overall style, and I've talked about a horse like this in a similar recent video over at Tampa Bay. It was a Brian Lynch horse, and these type of horses I'm not going to really draw myself towards them unless I find that the favorites are super vulnerable and I just feel like the race is like so wide open that I want to take a wild card. I don't feel that here. So this is a horse, even though I have limited information, I'll go back and watch the replay just from my other kind of handicapping. It's one I'm just kind of looking past. The number 2 Gunnavara. I kind of have an interesting thought on this horse as kind of being like my play against in here, but I imagine this horse maybe being the third choice. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this horse will be the third choice. I don't think it will take any near the support as the two we mentioned, Practical Joke and Irish War Cry. Maybe another horse, a now type horse, will take the third most money, but definitely will take his share of money. And I, like you, do not look at this horse favorably in terms of a potential to win this race and really move forward as a legitimate Triple Crown contender. I thought that jackpot race was great, but kind of a outlying race where they stopped up front, not real crazy about the horses that were behind Gunnavera that day, and just kind of thought the horse did what he had to do in the Holy Bull, but it's hard for me to envision a scenario where he turns the tables on Irish War Cry at the very least.
Yeah, and I thought that I saw the comment had trouble, and I thought this horse had a little bit of trouble, but it didn't affect his ability to win. And I don't see this horse getting that type of trip today. I'll kind of reference the plot a little bit because this is a big reason why I'm against this horse. One, I think he's probably going to, in the long term, going to be better around one turn. This horse can prove me wrong, but you can kind of see on the plot, even though he's in quadrant 2, which is kind of a stock and pounce, sometimes, and we don't red plot fit, sometimes just looking at this picture, like as a whole, kind of gives you an idea about this field. And it kind of just looks like a field that they're going to be sort of spread out. And so this horse being drawn inside with kind of, we talked about some speed horses to the outside that just kind of have to go in order to get this position. I think this horse is going to drop pretty far back, and I don't think that's going to be at this horse's advantage. He's kind of got that one turn move, and if he's so far back and distance going to be ideal, I just see this horse as a horse that I would play against this horse getting anything better. I don't think he's going to get third. I just really don't. I just don't see, while he's a good horse, just the pace scenario shaking out to where he's going to be able to really pass, some kind of tiring types in the lane. And of course to win, I can't knock the favorites, and I think he's one below. So I guess from being like the short price, if I am playing the race like in a trifecta scenario, I'm against.
Yeah, excuse me. I think this horse, put pretty simply, is probably a class below the top 3-year-olds in the country. If you look at just the running lines, to me, the Breeders' Futurity was a race. I know it was just at 2, but that race completely collapsed. This horse should have ran on a little better, in my opinion. Then faced, like I said, the Delta Jackpot was financially is a big race, but in terms of competition, Hot Shot and Dangerfield are nowhere near the level of the top horses in this spot. And then last time, Classic Empire was a mental mess and a physical mess on the track. And outside of Irish War Cry and Classic Empire, that field was pretty weak. So I'm with you. I think this horse has some potential to do well at the second tier graded 3-year-old races, but I don't think this is the spot.
Okay, cool. Let's move on to the number 3, and this horse just looks below kind of on all accounts to me.
Agree.
All right. I just don't see this horse playing a factor as far as pace or being able to kind of outkick anybody. So, type in the comments if you see otherwise, and I'll go back and take another look. Number 4, talk logistics. You mentioned the Holy Bull and just kind of being like, the who did he beat type thing. I thought this horse, I was kind of soft on him going into that race, but just really unimpressed with him coming out of that race.
Yeah, I agree. It looks like probably a one-turn horse that they're just trying 2 turns with to kind of make sure that this horse isn't a 2-turn horse and can make them a lot of money as a 3-year-old. But to me, it looks like a one-turn horse. I don't know if the horse has any speed, but what I can't see is, and understand is how Bravo will think that he tried to, come from off of, Irish War Cry the first time. He was completely dominated. I know this horse is probably not fast enough, but I just don't see how they can try to sit mid-pack and try to win the race. So maybe a little more prominently placed if physically able.
Yeah, I think that the physically able is the big question. I agree. Yeah, they might just try to go, or yeah, and you can even kind of see on the spot that on the plot here that maybe trip wise, if they do try to sit back, can be in a spot to sort of pass tired and have the horse run on a horse like Gunnevara. But yeah, from a win candidate, a little bit below, but maybe is like a 15-1 horse that could like suck up and get third. But yeah, unexciting. Hard for me to just kind of like him on his own merits. To be more of by default and underneath. So number 5, Beasley, kind of an interesting horse. I mean, as far as if you're looking for a horse that's improving and moving forward. Done nothing wrong. He has a B grade in every start on optics, maiden, both those optional claimers. A little bit concerning last time out that he did get warm the first time. First time we ever noted him getting warm and was reluctant to load. So I don't know if he was just kind of having a bad day or whatever. It was kind of closing along the inside. The winner kind of race rode him, but he did have room along the inside. So not a bad effort. I guess kind of a steadily improving horse. Trip perspective, hard kind of to make a case for maybe forwardly placed. And again, another horse that just kind of, stays on to get a minor. But I have a hard time at this point seeing him taking that step forward to beat those other two.
I can totally agree with the point that it was hard to see this horse moving forward enough to beat the top 2. However, I do think this horse is both talented and interesting. I was impressed with all 3 of his races going back. For a Mark Hennig horse to, Hennig might be 2 or 3%, maybe a few ticks more to first time out. For this horse to come out, take that kind of money and win in his debut was impressive to me and was game in doing so, fought on. Showed that kind of tenacity again on January 6th at Gulfstream when a horse, Classic Rock, got way loose on the lead, but this horse kept trying and fighting to the wire and finished second by just a length. And then last time out, I didn't see the notes that this horse was warm, which to me they might be encouraging, but the winner of that race, Battalion Runner, was 1-5. And the rest of the field was over 7 lengths back to those 2 who fought it out. So they spent a lot of money on this Son of Shackelford. I think the horse has fight and not just talent. So I could see this horse kind of fighting on when others are stopping. And I think he could do a whole lot worse, especially underneath the favorites, than using this horse at probably a pretty significant price, right?
You think? This horse has never been more than 4-1 in his career. So, yeah, I don't know. I see this horse as kind of being like the other horse if you're looking for an alternative. So yeah, I don't know as far as betting what kind of number, but what were you thinking? Like greater than 10-1?
8 or 10-1, and I think the more I watch this horse, I just think he's one to keep an eye on. I think he has talent, whether it be 2 turns in the Triple Crown Series is one thing, but I really liked all 3 races. He's improved in every start. I know this barn's pretty patient. They're not going to rush this horse. It's probably one of the more pricey 2-year-old or yearling. I guess it was a yearling purchase that Hennig has had. So I like this horse. I'm not sure if he can win the race, but I do like him moving forward.
Yeah, he's again as an individual, he's done nothing wrong and showed and ran well in every start. So if he runs another good race, it's not going to be any surprise to me. We went over practical joke already, and I think we went over 3 rules as our Irish war cry. So let's move outside to made you look. Kind of a strange Todd Pletcher move, taking a horse that's only been on turf and running in this spot. I tried to look up some trainer stuff on my end, and not to any success, but again, kind of a small sample size doing this kind of move with horses. But overall, this horse just has to. He's kind of slow. I mean, I know we're moving turf figures to dirt, but has to really take a big move forward. And I don't know. It's kind of a seems like let's take a shot type of a move to me.
I totally agree. I think this is first off the last race that the horse lost at 1-2 in the Kitten's Joy. I still thought he ran extremely well. Was totally up against it that day with a bad trip.
I agree.
But
We have that as a better than look at for closing against the
okay,
flow. So yeah, this horse is he's a good horse. Okay, sorry, go
yeah.
on.
I just think this is my opinion a lot of times with these races. It's almost like, let's try dirt just in case, because if this horse can dirt, we have all these big races in front of us as opposed to the Kitten's Joy for 3-year-olds, So that's my impression of a lot of times what happens in these races. I think we mentioned it with Talk Logistics, I think it was, that it's just like kind of making sure this horse doesn't want 2 turns against the very best 3-year-olds in the country, because we don't want to miss out on that opportunity. So, yeah, you wouldn't expect Fletcher to be desperate and make a move like that, but the owners sometimes make these decisions, and maybe they just wanted to give it a shot before assuming they were just a turf horse.
So yeah, another kind of just wild card. An interesting horse in the number 10. Obviously we talked about this horse being a pace scenario, type player that they're going to have to go, and he showed ability on the debut. Pulling an upset at 13-1, which is a little interesting. Gate, trying to see what that is. Hesitant to load, loan, and then a regress on there, and then just not. Just kind of going backward off that effort. Both the notes and optics saying that this horse wants shorter and prefer around 1 turn. From a plot perspective, just does not look strong out there. Big balloon, I think is what we like to call it. So a pace factor to me, but ability to finish and ability to get the distance is what I really question here.
Yeah, absolutely. I was a little, that big balloon was a little bit surprising to me, just because I think, I guess I just didn't. I mean, I don't know in all my times of going and using optics if I've ever seen a horse that looks like this on the plot win. So hopefully it doesn't put it in our face. I guess the one thing that is a little bit interesting is that this horse, despite it looking on paper like it's a sprinter because it dominated its maiden race and then it stopped twice going long against Stakes Company, but certainly the breeding would suggest that going long shouldn't be an issue out of by Bernardini out of a distorted humor mare, and my sense is that they thought this was a 2-turn horse from the get-go. We'll see how it goes. I'm interested to see the progression of this horse. There's probably some talent there in some capacity.
Yeah, if I was really gonna kind of dig in and try to make a case for this horse, coming out of that debut where we have a regress and then he ran back 28 days later. Regress, we just put out the impact value on this being really strong, and I mean he clearly did regress. So maybe the horse does want a little bit shorter, but if you're taking the regress into effect, can be a little bit forgiving there. And then as far as the Jerome goes, being run in the mud, kind of slightly against the flow, not asked to run late, which is going to contribute to the horse looking like a big balloon on the plot, right? If the horse is not being asked to run the last half mile. So I mean, I guess if you like this horse on debut and you're really kind of keeping the faith and think he can get back to that race. is that going to be competitive enough? And I guess that is the question. On optics figures, ran a 93 on that debut, and then 85.34, but would have to improve off that 93. So you'd have to look at that regress effort on that debut win and think that he is capable of better. And all things considered, if I'm being super forgiving and kind of that case, I don't know if I can make the assessment that he's going to move forward from that.
Yeah, that all sounds very fair. I had a hard time getting a read on this horse, especially knowing that he probably will make the lead. But if Three Rules presses, it should, or presses or is to his inside, it'll make it very difficult on him. But it is an interesting wild card, and I think it goes back to another important thing that we mentioned last week, I believe. But just that the plot, you have to interpret the plot as well. So if you see a big balloon, like we call it here, sometimes it's because the horse has stopped 8 times in the exact same scenario, and sometimes there's more that you want to read into it and maybe analyze personally.
Yeah. So we'll move on to the number 11, because I know that you talked about this horse being, part of the pace factor, and kind of the more I look at it, stretching out for the first time and being drawn outside, will probably need to be used a little bit, just kind of based on, based on the way that this race is going to shake out. And he's not slow early. Has run against a couple nice horses, Borsavento and Eastport. Eastport being a horse I'm really looking forward to early on in the card. I believe it's the 3rd race. Both those horses come back in that race, and I think that they're both nice horses. And then, of course, Battalion Runner, who he ran a good second too on debut. Kind of a perfect trip. I wanted to see a little bit more late, but Battalion Runner was very strong late in the stretch. One thing that I will mention about this horse that you're not going to see in the paper, and Scott, I don't know if you remember that, because we were watching this race at the NHC. We were sitting next to each other, and when this horse crossed the wire, I'm like, is he bleeding? And after watching the debut, I went back and looked at it. He was bleeding pretty bad from his mouth. So I don't know what that's about, but just something to note that was visually there. Kind of a hard race, but again, 35 days. Another horse that needs to move forward, and just kind of a little bit soft on figures. Has to move forward. Tricky post, tricky distance. I think this horse has got a lot of things to overcome in this spot.
Yeah, I totally remember that race, and I think you remember I liked this horse that day, and the tongue was bleeding, and he dominated that field, and I know this horse has talent, but that's 7 furlongs against non-winners, and it's 1 turn, and I think I compared the horse to Barbados that day, which was another Tomlinson horse from a year ago that did well sprinting, and I think had injury issues, but we never really got to see how that horse really would have stacked up. But I think this is an ambitious spot. I mean, I understand taking a chance, but anytime you're, looking to go 2 turns for the first time against winners for the first time, that's a big question mark to me. And the outside draw should have this horse as a factor at some point, but I would be surprised if he was running on late with the top few in here.
Okay. So just kind of, going through the field, I feel like we kind of covered everybody from an individual standpoint, and again, I just looked at this race, kind of referenced the plot again. I have it on distance right now, and again, the 8 just kind of looks like another kind of strong pod, big square. I don't know if you looked at it from distance, but it is a little bit interesting. Big square in quadrant 1, everybody kind of drops out, and I think that the 2 favorites, I think that's a lot of times where you need to start your handicapping, even though we don't have the morning line, where you need to start your handicapping and assessing those 2 horses, and kind of not really being able to find any faults, and then look through the rest of the field, and I think those 2 horses look like the 2 horses to beat. And again, I guess my one opinion outside of that is Gunavaran kind of running out of the top 3. Did you have a long shot horse, or a horse that you're going to kind of maybe key underneath or use as a B type horse?
Yeah, I think the only horse that I could see stepping up when running with these in terms of talent would be number 5 Beasley. If you were looking for some reason to not use Practical Joke, the horse has been training, looks very well, like very forwardly, and real nice series of works for Brown. But maybe he will need one off the bench. I know Brown's very high on this horse, like many, but that could be something that potentially could keep Practical Joke out of the exacta. But the more you look at the plot, the better Irish War Cry looks. And, though I guess the only hope with that horse would be that maybe he could potentially regress. Even though he did it easily that day, they sometimes, the horses still often regress off of what might look like an easy race when it's super fast.
Yeah, even, optics figures 108 last time out and then a 96 before that. So I think even if this horse regresses, let's say he regresses back to the 96 or regresses 10 to 98, that would still kind of put him in the top of the field. I had the number 6 Practical Joke just kind of pulled up while you were talking, and from a class perspective, I think this horse is strong. 2 B pluses and a B. Came into the Breeders' Cup Juvenile off a hard race, kind of that awesome stretch duel with Syndergaard back in the Champagne. I'll do a quick kind of speed figure sort, and we can just kind of see where what I mean from that standpoint, because he sits on top as a 108, and then Gunnevara at 104, 3 rules at 100. So if he drops 10, he's a 98. He's still in the top 3. With again Practical Joke and Gunnevara both being in 97. So unless he just completely regresses, and just throws a complete no-show race, even kind of a backing up a little bit of a B effort versus B plus, he should still be able to contend here off that last race. But I guess that is something to consider.
Good points. Yeah, I can't see being aggressive in any capacity playing against the 2 favorites on top. I don't think that would be a wise move in this spot.
Right. Sometimes it's worth getting creative, and sometimes you just have to, trust the data. All right, well, very good. I think that's, covers this race. Next week, are we going to be in California next week?
Next week I think it's Big Cap Day, right? Okay. So I think the sand. I always get these mixed up. It's embarrassing that I do, but one of the sand is, I think, at Mastery is returning. Hold on, I can give us a quick check now. I always forget which ones get run. The sand races tend to get mixed up in my head.
I'll probably end up just calling it the 8th race on Saturday. So
I know your style, but let's see. The San Felipe, Grade 2, $400,000, mount a 16th. And I think it should be the strongest thus far of the Southern California prep races, which there's been one strong one and a couple not so strong. You should have one of the Baffords, I believe, Mastery, and one of the Sheriffs, either Gormley or the Royal Mo. Should be in there in addition to a few others. So should be competitive and should be get us on the way out here moving towards the top Derby prospects.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that, because I know this, Gulfstream and Santa Anita, it's a circuit I just started doing the notes for the end of January, but you follow all the time, so I'm looking forward to discussing that race. Looks very competitive. So all right, very good. Well. End the recording, and thank you guys for watching. Again, follow, comments. We left anything out, any questions, feel free to hit us up on Twitter or in the comments section below. Thanks again for watching. Good luck this weekend.